were real. And we were up investigating actually these miners that way back in the wilderness up by Chester, up in that Paiute area or whatever it is. Forgotten now, it's been so long ago, but we were standing around the fire. They was telling us, yeah, we've seen one right over there, and I mean this rock came spinning by us. It sounded like an arrow going by, like that, and hit this tree. And we see where it knocked the bark off the next morning because it was just getting dusk. And these guys wouldn't stay there. They said, we will not spend the night here. And but whatever threw that had to have a catapult or something. What an arm! A human couldn't do what we witnessed. But that's the only time one of the guys going into our camp in the Sierras of California, he was coming from a different direction one time and had this rock thrown at him the size of a grapefruit over his head. And I don't think, if they want to hit you, they will hit you. They're probably really good at that. But I think they just want to get you away from wherever you are. So I suggest getting away from wherever you are, just like you did. The speed of these things is so fast. That could have been the same one, really. Just
well, it was there when we got to the car, and that's what scared me. And I don't know if you ever heard of Ed Romans in Canada. He's the #1 folk singer in Canada, and he was on my show back maybe 5 months ago because he called and wanted to be on my show because he ran into a Bigfoot last year. And him and his dog were out, he lives in a very, farmland, wooded area. And him and his dog, they went out for a nice long, walk. And all of a sudden, maybe it was like 1,000 or so feet away from him. He thought he saw something. And then he realized it was a Bigfoot. And it started coming towards him. And he noticed the same thing I noticed. When it started coming towards him, it ran on 2 legs and kind of went down ever so often onto all 4s. And then come back up again, and then go back down. And it chased him quite a long ways, and then he turned around the last time, and it was gone. So he had the authorities and everything out there, the wildlife authorities up there, and wherever it was in Canada, they, were doing a lot of checking on it, and they told him that there was definitely Bigfoot out there.
Yeah. Well, if they want to catch you, I firmly believe that they can catch you real quick.
Oh, yeah.
They're so fast. What I saw was going so fast through the trees, I couldn't even identify what it looked like other than it was huge. And it just made these sounds that we were recording. I've seen it all, and even my comment about seeing it was on tape. And it was just, my friend also saw another one that same night from another spot. There were 3 of them in our camp when I was recording these that one night. People ask me, what made you take your tape recorder up there? Well, obviously, if you have multiple encounters like we were having every time we'd go up, well, not every time, but most of the time in 71, 72, 74, all the way through there, we would have these things come around and take our food after we go inside our shelter. Well, we want to record them because they were chattering. They were making sounds. And Al Berry, he's the investigative reporter that was sent down to investigate this because we asked for help to find out. Well, none of us were into Bigfoot. This is a hunting camp. We weren't looking for Bigfoot, believe me. So anyway, we realize these things are there. There's something going on we don't understand, and the world doesn't even know about it. So we got to get this thing resolved and figure out what's going on. So Al Berry came in. He started recording them professionally, and when I say professionally, he's a reporter by nature, investigative reporter. He's also got a master's degree in science. He's also, he's passed away now. He became a good friend of mine later on. But anyway, he's the one that fostered the studies at the University of Wyoming, Professor Curlin, who studied these things and said the tapes were genuine, that they had not been speeded up, slowed down, because when you hear them, you think, oh, somebody could have just speeded them up and played them backwards or something. But that's all been established that didn't happen. And we knew it didn't happen because we were there recording with our little cassette recorders. But you have to have a professor or somebody that's got some kind of a title behind their name to say these things before anybody's really going to buy it, or believe you. He wanted people to believe it because he knew the significance of this. We really did not realize the significance, just how significant this was. At the time, I didn't anyway. And anyway, it wasn't until 2008 tell a cryptolinguist who was trained by the military, the Navy, as a cryptolinguist to study languages that you don't know what they're saying, and to study them and to find out if it is a language or what's going on. So he was trained, and he's got thousands of hours they call it under the can, when you listen to languages and you have to transcribe whether it is a language or if it's just a sound. Well, what we found out, which is critically important, I think, to this whole topic, is that these things have a complex language of their own. And that means they have what they call a morpheme stream, which is a group of words that make a sapient sentence. They were actually talking to each other. We knew that. They were talking to each other. That's just what was going on. But until you get somebody trained like this man was, I didn't even know men like this existed, but he's probably one of the top in the world to do something like this. He transcribed language out of our tape recordings. So besides Dr. Curlin's stuff and Scott Nelson, he's a cryptolinguist who teaches foreign languages now in Missouri. He came out and interviewed us because he heard about these, and he asked for the originals and asked for the context of when these were made at different times, and went and studied them. And he transcribed the language, and he's come right out and said these are language sentences by the human definition of language. When I say by the human definition of language, I mean they have that morpheme stream like I'm talking to you right now that make up a cognizant sentence. And as all animals have a way of communicating, but with language that is like humans is not supposed to be ascribed to anything but humans. And that makes them something else. And that's remarkable, I think, because if they are part human, that gets into a whole other field. And it rewrites the history books is what it does. It throws a kink into Darwinism. It throws a kink into religions. It throws a kink into so many things. I don't think our government or anybody wants to know anything about this or wants us to know anything about this, because I do believe they do know about it already. I have reason to believe that.
Well, it's been too many people, seen him. I'll be honest with you. I've had people that want to be a guest on the show, and they have told me, well, I had one guy who claimed he was a Bigfoot hunter. For months, he was emailing me every day wanting to be on the show. So finally, I called him back, and, I asked him, well, you're a Bigfoot hunter. Where have you been out looking for Bigfoot? He goes, well, I haven't. I used to read a lot of books about Bigfoot. And then when the internet came on, I've done a lot of research. When I said, that doesn't make you a Bigfoot hunter. It doesn't. It makes you a good researcher, but not a hunter.
Well, actually, it makes him kind of an armchair researcher, I would say. The ones who really research are out in the woods trying to make something happen. I tell people, though, you can't make it happen. You got to let it happen. And a lot of that depends on you and what you do and what you don't do when you're in the woods. And that's why I wrote my first book, Voices in the Wilderness. And in that book, I talk about what went on up there and how I got involved. And it's my 40-year chronicle of doing this. And I've been doing it now 47 years, but I did this when I was 41, something like that. And it comes with a CD, which has the sound. So when I get to the context of the sound I'm talking about, you can actually hear the sound. And that's very popular. I've had that out for a few years now. And the other book, which I guess we can talk about later, is called The Quantum Bigfoot, because all this stuff is put dots together, which kind of drew a picture for me, and also all the people I've interviewed and talked with over the years of this thing. It's just the stuff they do is phenomenal, and it answers a lot of the questions that went on in our camp, too. There's a science behind everything. Al Berry, having a master's degree in science, he says, don't talk about those strange, weird things that went on up here, or you're going to lose credibility. No one's going to ask you to ever talk about this. Well, for years, we didn't talk about it anyway, because just like your friend, the doctor, he didn't want to get ridiculed. Well, I was a businessman. I had over 200 employees and ran several businesses, and I didn't want to get laughed at, so I kind of just kept it between me and some close friends, and that's how we all did, except for Al Berry. But once the word got out and we started talking a little bit about it, well, I said, oh, the heck with it. I'm just going to come out with what I know and what I've witnessed, and people can either believe me or they don't believe me.
Well,
would care.
It's so hard because, if you sat there like a couple months ago, that's when I, brought it up that I saw a Bigfoot. And then, after I said that, I had so many emails and texts from people, saying, "Oh, I'm lying." Well, you know what? You're not, how can I say this? I see people posting stuff up on YouTube where they're going on a hiking trail, which probably a couple hundred people walk a day. Looking for Bigfoot, and saying, "Oh, look at this area. This is a Bigfoot." They tie branches together. I was out in the middle. I was out in the Canadian Rockies where they had an old internment camp 2 miles from the road. Okay, and we had to really do some serious hiking into it. Because we were doing pictures of, we wanted the internment camp. We actually went there to find old ghost towns and the old silver mines and cemeteries. That's what we were photographing. I didn't expect to run across one. I don't think it expected us to run across one. But when you run across one, you will never forget about it. I mean, that scream, okay, it is so chilling. I mean, I don't go around bragging, to people. I peed my pants before, as I was running. That's how scared I was. I thought I was going to die.
Well, they could have caught you. I just give you that. Cause,
I know it could have.
They're just trying to get you away from there for some reason. Maybe a young one, but who knows. But
well, it didn't want us to. It didn't want us to come back. I mean, if it wanted to kill us, it would have killed us. I mean, let's face it. I mean, two people running that doesn't know the area, running through the woods. Evidently, it knew the woods, and it tracked us all the way back.
Well, you heard the story of Albert Osman up in Canada, haven't you?
No, I have not.
1924. This is an old story that John Green, who is a Canadian also, he interviewed him in 1953, I think it was, something like that, and he had claimed he had been kidnapped or taken away by a Bigfoot when he's a minor. He dropped off up in the Toba Inlet, and he was thinking something was messing with him during the night, and make a long story short here, something picked him up during the night, threw it over his shoulder, and started walking off with him in a sleeping bag. And he was held captive for 6 days in this kind of a bowl-like area that he said there was 4 of them, a male, a female, and 2 adolescents, and he wasn't sure what his purpose was, what they got him for, what he was there for. He didn't know if they was going to eat him or if he was going to try to use him for a mate for one of the younger ones or what. So anyway, he did have some chewing tobacco in his sleeping bag where he because he thought some raccoon or something was messing with him at night. He kept hearing things, so he thought, I'll put this so I can keep it. And he, when the big male was guarding him there at the one way to get out of this little box he was in, he fed him this chewing tobacco, and he got sick, and he took off. And his detailed description of how he left, where he left, what he was seeing, Mount Baker, the whole trip was very detailed. It was considered very credible by John Green, who's a top researcher who just passed away recently also. By the way, a lot of these guys are passed away all around me here.
Ron, it happens when you get a certain age,
I know. You just sort of, I say pass on. I don't say die anymore because I found out through quantum physics that energy doesn't die. It just changes form. So we're all going to change form, I guess, one of these days. We just got to be ready for it. Anyway, this guy came out and he had his story, and it was considered credible by everybody that listened to him. So John Green interviewed him and wrote in his book, The Apes Among Us. And he was considered very credible. I went up there. I'm a pilot. I flew my own plane up there with a couple other researchers, and we actually went to Toba Inlet and tried to assess how he could have made the trip, because he didn't know where he was going during the night when he got carried away. He was looking for the bowl he might have been kept in and how he might have seen Mount Baker and all that. So it was a fun trip, but I challenged John Green's account of that just a little bit. Because first of all, it was like 30 years later when he interviewed him, and I don't think he was in Toba Inlet. There's several inlets up there, and I think he was in a different inlet because it just didn't pan out what he said and what he wrote and what we witnessed up there ourselves. But anyway, I wrote about that in my last book, The Quantum Bigfoot, and the whole story and what we went through. I got pictures of it. So wow. I got off on that tangent, but he just didn't know. Are they going to eat me? Because supposedly in native lore, they eat people. Some of them do. But I think, again, there are different kinds.
Well, not to interrupt you, but, some of my family members are from 2 Indian tribes that, a couple of my relatives, my children married into. And I actually got to talk to some of the elders of the tribe, Muckleshoot.